He saw her, a black woman in a simple gray sweatsuit, sitting in the most expensive seat on the plane, and he laughed. Must be a diversity quota, he sneered to his partner, loud enough for the cabin to hear. He ordered his Dom Perignon, demanding the flight attendant cater to his every whim, all while mocking the woman who sipped her ginger ale. He thought his Patek Philippe watch and first-class ticket made him a king. He didn't know he was mocking the one person who could end his career with a single text. He didn't know he was on her plane. Before we begin, comment where you are watching from today, and make sure to subscribe because tomorrow's story is one you don't want to miss. Now, let's get into it. The Aurajet International flagship lounge at JFK's Terminal 8 was a predictable symphony of hushed efficiency. Marble floors gleamed under warm, recessed lighting, and the clinking of heavy glassware against stone countertops provided a gentle percussion. The lounge was designed to be an oasis, a bubble of champagne-fueled tranquility before the transatlantic hop. Serafina Jordan, seated in a secluded corner, found it anything but tranquil. She was dressed in a way that screamed anonymous, not billionaire. A charcoal gray Loro Piana cashmere tracksuit, a garment that cost more than most people's monthly rent, looked to the untrained eye like simple sweats. Her hair was pulled back in a neat bun, and her only accessory was a simple, understated Cartier watch. She was 42, but her unadorned face and clear, observant eyes made her age ambiguous. On her lap, a worn paperback, not a flashing iPad. She was in 1A for Flight 101 to London Heathrow, and she was, as always, working. Serafina was the founder and majority shareholder of the Jordan Capital Group, the private equity firm that had, 3 years prior, acquired a controlling stake in Aurajet International. The airline had been failing, a legacy carrier bleeding money. Serafina, known for her Midas touch in logistics and tech, saw potential. She poured billions into retrofitting the fleet, retraining staff, and most importantly, elevating the customer experience. But she was an old-school CEO. She didn't trust reports. She trusted her own eyes. This was her quarterly ghost flight, flying as a regular passenger to see where the polish was flawless and where the veneer cracked. The crack appeared in the form of Marcus Thorne. He swaggered into the lounge like he owned it, which in his mind he probably did. He was tall, with a mane of silvering hair brushed back, wearing a suit that was just a little too tight, a little too shiny. On his arm was Chloe, a woman half his age, encased in a white Balmain dress, her face a mask of sculpted neutrality. A massive, blood-red Hermès Birkin bag was slung over her arm. They didn't just walk to the bar, they announced their arrival. "Is this it?" Marcus boomed to the bartender, gesturing at the champagne on ice. "Veuve Clicquot? You're serving Veuve in the flagship lounge? It's like a glorified college party. Get me the Dom, 2012. If you don't have it, send someone to the duty-free to buy it." The bartender, a young man named Alex, flinched. "Sir, the Dom Perignon is reserved for the in-flight seller on our London route." "Then what am I paying for?" Marcus snapped. "This." He tapped his wrist, where a Patek Philippe Nautilus gleamed. "This watch costs more than your salary. I don't drink commuter champagne." Chloe giggled, a sound like tiny, sharp bells. "He's just so particular, darling." Serafina watched, her eyes narrowing. She knew for a fact that the 2012 Dom was stocked, but also that it was against lounge policy to open it here. The bartender was following the rules. She made a small note on her phone, time-stamping the incident. "JFK T8 Lounge, 6:15 p.m., M. Thorne, self-ID'd Patek. Abusive to staff Ari Champagne." Alex, bartender, held composure well, but lounge manager should have stepped in. She returned to her book, tuning them out as the pre-boarding announcement for Flight 101 began. She gathered her simple Tumi carry-on and headed toward the gate, joining the first class and Aura Executive Platinum line. She was third in line when Marcus and Chloe pushed past 2 other passengers to stand directly behind her. Marcus was still complaining. "It's absurd. The whole point of flying first is to be separated from, well, you know." He looked at Serafina's back. He saw the gray sweatsuit, the simple sneakers, the nondescript bag. He leaned into Chloe and said in a stage whisper that was designed to be heard, "Must be an employee, probably a non-revenue ticket. They really should make them board last. It just cheapens the whole experience." Serafina didn't turn. She didn't react. She simply waited for the gate agent to scan her boarding pass. "Welcome, Miss Jordan," the agent said with a professional smile. "Thank you," Serafina replied, her voice warm but quiet. She stepped onto the jet bridge. Behind her, she heard Marcus laugh. Jordan, probably a diversity hire from baggage handling who won a raffle. Amazing. Serafina Jordan, the diversity hire, walked down the carpeted ramp, turned left into the exclusive first-class cabin of the Boeing 777-300ER, and settled into Suite 1A, the most private and spacious seat on her entire aircraft. The Aurajet First Class Sky Suite was Serafina's flagship project. Each of the 8 suites was a private cocoon of brushed aluminum, cream leather, and soft, close mahogany doors. Serafina had personally overseen the design, from the thread count of the pajamas to the weight of the silver-plated cutlery. She stowed her Toomey bag, slipped off her sneakers, and put on the provided slippers. She declined the pre-departure pajamas, preferring to change later. She was analyzing the new amenity kit, a sleek leather case by a sustainable British brand, Aspinal of London, when Marcus Thorne and Chloe arrived. Their seats were 1C and 1D, the adjacent center suites. Marcus stopped dead when he saw Serafina in 1A. His eyes raked over her, from her simple bun down to her gray socks. He visibly recoiled, as if finding a bug in his salad. Chloe just stared. "Oh," she said, her voice dripping with disappointment. "You've got to be kidding me," Marcus muttered. He flagged down the lead purser, a polished woman in her 50s with a name tag that read Evelyn Shaw. "Excuse me," Marcus said, not bothering to lower his voice. "I believe there's been a mistake. We are in 1C and D, but I was under the impression this cabin was exclusive." Evelyn, a 25-year veteran of the skies, pasted on her customer service smile. "Welcome aboard, Mr. Thorne. Aurajet First is our most exclusive cabin. Is there a problem with your suite?" "The problem," Marcus said, gesturing unsubtly at Serafina, "is her. In 1A. Is that really a full-fare passenger?" Serafina didn't even look up from the amenity kit. She was testing the zipper. Evelyn's smile faltered for a fraction of a second. She glanced at her official flight manifest. "Sir, all passengers in this cabin are ticketed for first class. Suite 1A is occupied by Miss Jordan." "Right, Miss Jordan." Marcus savored the name with sarcastic venom. "Well, fine, but I want it noted that I am not happy with the standard. Not at all." He and Chloe settled into their seats, the privacy screen between them immediately lowered. Evelyn, flustered, hurried to Serafina's suite. "Miss Jordan, a pre-departure beverage. We have our 2012 Dom Perignon, or a lovely Sauvignon Blanc." "I'll just have a ginger ale with ice and a lime, please," Serafina said, smiling up at her. "Of course," Evelyn said, looking slightly surprised. From across the aisle, a loud, derisive snort. "Did you hear that, Chloe? Ginger ale?" Marcus was laughing, a horrible braying sound. "Pays 5 figures for a ticket, or more likely doesn't, and she orders a soda. It's like giving a Stradivarius to a monkey." Chloe shrieked with laughter. "Marcus, you're awful!" Serafina's eyes met Evelyn's. In that moment, Serafina wasn't the owner. She was just a black woman, and Evelyn was an employee who had just heard an insult that was impossible to misinterpret. Evelyn's face went pale. She was trapped. On one hand, a loud, abusive, clearly wealthy passenger. On the other, a quiet passenger who was the target of that abuse. Evelyn made her choice. She broke eye contact with Serafina and scurried away. "Your ginger ale coming right up, ma'am," she called over her shoulder, her voice strained. Serafina sighed, a long, quiet breath. This was the crack in the veneer. Her staff was trained for de-escalation, but that training apparently failed when the aggressor was wearing a Patek. Marcus, emboldened by the lack of response, continued. He was now speaking to Evelyn as she returned with Serafina's drink. Make sure mine is the Dom, darling. And I mean right to the brim. I've got to make up for the atmosphere. Evelyn avoided Serafina's gaze as she placed the ginger ale on the polished burlwood tray. Enjoy your beverage, Miss Jordan. Thank you, Evelyn, Serafina said, her voice perfectly level. As the purser left, Serafina took another note on her phone. Aurajet 101, 7:05 p.m. Passenger M. Thorne, 1C. Racially motivated harassment. Monkey. Diversity quota. Purser E. Shaw witnessed incident. Failed to intervene. Failed to file a passenger conduct report. Serious training deficit. She took a sip of her ginger ale. The flight hadn't even left the ground, and her review was already scathing. She was angry, but she was also methodical. This wasn't just an insult. It was a data point. A very, very expensive data point. The heavy doors of the 777 closed with a pneumatic hiss. The captain's voice came over the PA, welcoming them on the 6-hour, 20-minute flight. As the plane began its taxi toward the runway, Marcus raised his glass of champagne in Serafina's direction, a mocking toast. To diversity, he sneered. Serafina met his gaze for the first time. She didn't scowl, she didn't frown. She just looked at him. An unblinking, analytical, appraising stare. It was the same look she gave a balance sheet just before she gutted a company's entire non-performing division. The look was so devoid of the reaction he wanted, anger or shame, that it unnerved him. He dropped his gaze first, turning back to Chloe with a grumble. Serafina Jordan closed her suite door, the do not disturb light glowing amber. The battle was over for now. The war, she knew, would resume at 38,000 feet. The ascent was smooth, a powerful, quiet climb that pressed them all gently into their seats. Once at cruising altitude, the fasten seatbelt sign pinged off, and the cabin crew sprang into their polished ballet of service. Serafina opened her laptop. She had a $1.2 billion acquisition proposal for a green energy logistics firm to review. For an hour, the only sound in her suite was the gentle hum of the engines and the quiet clicking of her keys. Then the meal service began. This was the centerpiece of the Aurajet first experience, and Serafina was keen to see its execution. The issues started with a junior flight attendant named Ben Carter. Ben was in his early 20s, and Serafina could see the nervous energy radiating from him. He was assigned to Marcus and Chloe. "You're amuse-bouche, Mr. Thorne," Ben said, his hand shaking slightly as he placed the tiny, intricate dish of seared scallop. "And Miss Davies, your chilled cucumber soup." "It's about time," Marcus grumbled, not looking up from his iPad. "And this wine," he said, swirling the Chassagne Montrachet. "It's not cold enough. Take it back. Bring me the whole bottle and a bucket of ice. I'll pour it myself. Clearly you can't be trusted." Yes, sir. Right away, sir," Ben stammered. As he turned, his elbow brushed the edge of Marcus's water glass, which was dangerously close to the aisle. A few drops of water splashed onto the plush carpet. Marcus exploded. "You clumsy oaf, are you an idiot? This is a $4,000 suit. You could have ruined it. Get me your superior. Now." Ben froze, his face ashen. "Sir, I'm so sorry, it was just water." "Now!" Marcus roared. The cabin, which had been a cocoon of privacy, was suddenly on high alert. The other 4 passengers, a Japanese businessman, an elderly British couple, all had their doors open. They were watching. Evelyn Shaw, the purser, rushed over, her face a mask of practiced calm. "Sir, what seems to be the problem?" "Your boy here," Marcus spat, "is incompetent. He nearly soaked me. I want him out of this cabin. Get him out of my sight. He can go serve the animals in economy where he belongs." This, Serafina thought, was the moment. This was where Evelyn was required by company policy to defend her crew and de-escalate the passenger. The policy was clear. Aurajet maintains a zero-tolerance policy for abuse toward its staff. Serafina watched, waiting. Evelyn looked at Ben's terrified face, then at Marcus's purple, enraged one. Ben, Evelyn said, her voice tight, go to the galley, assist with the main cabin prep. I will handle first-class service for Mr. Thorne. Ben looked crushed. Evelyn, go, now. Ben nodded, his shoulders slumped, and fled the cabin. Serafina's fingers flew across her phone. 9:30 p.m., M. Thorne. Abusive conduct toward F.A.B. Carter. Purser E. Shaw failed to defend staff. Ceded to abusive passenger demands. Removed F.A. from his station. Catastrophic leadership failure. Evelyn turned back to Marcus, her smile now verging on desperate. Mr. Thorne, I do apologize. Your next course is coming right up. And of course, a fresh bottle of the Montrachet. On the house. It's already on the house, woman. Marcus sneered. It's first class. Of course, sir, Evelyn said, bowing her head and retreating. Serafina had seen enough. This was no longer a review. It was an intervention. She pressed the call button. Evelyn appeared a moment later, her composure barely holding. Yes, Miss Jordan. Evelyn, Serafina said, her voice low but carrying. I'd like to see the passenger conduct report forms, please, and the captain's incident log. Evelyn's blood ran cold. This was not a request a normal passenger made. Ever. Ma'am, those are internal documents. I'm not permitted to. You're not permitted, or you haven't started one? Serafina asked. Before Evelyn could answer, Marcus leaned out of his suite, having heard the exchange. Trouble in paradise, sweetheart? Are they not treating you right? Maybe they ran out of ginger ale. He laughed, and Chloe joined in. Maybe she wants to file a complaint that the seat is too big. Serafina ignored him, her eyes locked on Evelyn. You are the lead purser on this flight. You have a passenger in 1C who has, in the last 2 hours, violated 3 separate Aurajet carriage policies. He has been racially abusive, he has verbally assaulted a member of your crew, and he has created a hostile environment for every other passenger. Your response was to punish your crew member and offer the aggressor more champagne. Explain your reasoning. The entire cabin went dead silent. The only sound was the roar of the engines. Evelyn's jaw worked, but no sound came out. Marcus stood up. Now you listen here, he said, stepping into the aisle. Who in the hell do you think you are? You're a passenger. A very lucky one at that. You don't get to review the staff. You don't get to question me. You sit there, drink your little soda, and be quiet. He took a step toward her suite. In fact, I'm tired of looking at you. Evelyn, I want her moved. Put her in the back, I don't care. Get her out of first class. Serafina looked at the man standing in the aisle, his face puffed with arrogance and alcohol. She looked at the purser, paralyzed by indecision. Evelyn, Serafina said, her voice now edged with steel. A moment ago, Mr. Thorne suggested I was a monkey. Just now, he ordered you to remove me from a seat I paid for. I am a black woman, and your passenger in 1C is a racist bully. This is a Code 3 passenger conduct violation, and it requires you to notify the captain immediately. Why have you not done so? Evelyn stammered. Miss Jordan, it's a delicate situation. Mr. Thorne is one of our top-tier flyers. He's a top-tier bigot is what he is, Serafina said. This broke Marcus. You bitch, he yelled. You call me a racist? You with your chip on your shoulder who probably scammed your way in here. You're the problem, people like you. He was fully in the aisle, looming. Serafina didn't flinch. She simply raised her phone. Evelyn, she said, her voice dangerously calm. Get the captain, or I will. Using the satellite phone. My access code is Alpha Juliet 001. The change in Evelyn Shaw was instantaneous and absolute. It was as if she had been struck by lightning. Her face, which had been pale with panic, turned a chalky, bloodless white. Her body went rigid. Alpha Juliet 001. It wasn't just a code, it was the code. Every lead purser, every captain, every operations director memorized a handful of priority codes. There were codes for hijackings, for medical emergencies, for catastrophic failure. And then there was that one. The one they were told they would likely never ever hear. It was the personal high-priority override code for Serafina Jordan, the owner. Evelyn's mouth opened and closed. She looked at the woman in the gray sweatsuit, the quiet woman with the analytical eyes, and she didn't see a passenger anymore. She saw the face from the cover of Forbes and Fortune, the woman who had saved their airline, the woman who signed their paychecks. "Ma'am," Evelyn whispered. The word was choked, terrified. Marcus Thorne, however, was oblivious. He was too consumed by his own rage. "What is that more nonsense, some secret employee code? Is that your little HR complaint number? Nobody cares. I'll have your job. I'll have her job." "Mr. Thorne," Evelyn said, her voice a high-pitched, trembling squeak. "You need to sit down, now." "I will not sit down. I am the customer." "No," Serafina said, finally standing up. She was not a tall woman, but she projected an authority that filled the cabin. "You are the problem." She turned to the trembling purser. "Evelyn, you have failed. You failed your crew, you failed your passengers, and you failed your company. Go to the galley. Get on the phone. Tell Captain Morrison that Miss Jordan is in 1A and that we have a Code 7 breach in the first-class cabin." "A Code 7, Evelyn whispered. That was imminent threat to cabin staff integrity. "Mr. Thorne has verbally assaulted staff and threatened a passenger. Yes, Code 7. I want this plane met at the gate by Metropolitan Police and the Orajet UK Operations Director, Jonathan Briggs. Tell Jonathan to meet me on the jet bridge. Is that clear?" Evelyn, on the verge of tears, could only nod. Yes, Miss Jordan. Right away." She fled. The cabin was so quiet the hum of the engine sounded like a roar. Marcus Thorne's anger suddenly evaporated, replaced by a cold, confusing dread. He'd heard the names: Captain Morrison, Jonathan Briggs, Miss Jordan. He looked at Chloe, whose face was as white as her dress. She was frantically typing Serafina's name into her phone. "Marcus," Chloe whispered, her hand shaking as she held up the screen. Marcus squinted. He saw the Forbes article. "The Queen of the Skies, How Serafina Jordan's Billions Rescued Orajet." There was a picture of Serafina not in sweats but in a stunning blue Armani suit, standing in front of the exact 777 they were currently on. Marcus made a sound, a small, strangled gulp. He staggered back, collapsing into his suite. "No," he breathed. No, it's a coincidence, it's a different person." But he knew it wasn't. The eyes, the calm, appraising eyes were the same. He looked at Serafina, who was still standing. "Miss Jordan," he stammered, his voice suddenly sycophantic. I think there has been a terrible misunderstanding. I had no idea. No idea of what, Mr. Thorne?" Serafina's voice was ice. "That I owned the plane. Does that make me less of a monkey? Does my net worth change the fact that you thought I was a diversity hire who didn't belong?" I was joking," he pleaded, a bead of sweat tracing a line down his temple. It was banter, just cabin banter. Right, Chloe?" Chloe looked like she was going to be sick. I don't feel well," she whimpered, closing her suite door. "You weren't joking," Serafina said. "You were articulating your worldview. You believe your money makes you superior. You believe your race makes you superior. You believe that your status gives you the right to abuse people you see as lesser, whether that's a young flight attendant or a black woman. The problem is you're not used to lesser people having the power to hold you accountable." Less than 2 minutes later, the chime for the PA sounded, but it was a specific, short chime only for the first-class cabin. "This is Captain Morrison speaking." His voice was deep, authoritative, and clipped. "Miss Jordan, I have been appraised of the situation. I apologize profusely for the conduct you have had to endure. We are 3 hours from Heathrow. Ground security and executive management will be meeting our flight. Do you require any further action from the flight deck? Is your safety compromised?" Marcus looked like he might faint. The captain was apologizing to her. "No, thank you, Captain," Serafina said, her voice perfectly clear. My safety is not at risk. The threat has been neutralized, but please pass my thanks to the cockpit crew, and I would like to speak to Flight Attendant Ben Carter in the galley at his convenience. Understood, Miss Jordan. Morrison out. Serafina sat back down in 1A. She looked at Marcus, who was now a puddle of terror in his $4,000 suit. Please, Miss Jordan, he begged, leaning out. My job. I'm a partner at Greystone Capital. We do business with airlines. This can't get out. Please, I'll do anything. I'll donate to your favorite charity, a large amount. Serafina looked at him, her expression unreadable. Mr. Thorne, you have spent the last 2 hours providing me with the most valuable, unfiltered market research I have ever received. You exposed a critical weakness in my company's culture. I should be thanking you. She picked up her laptop. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a $1.2 billion acquisition to review. I suggest you use the next 3 hours to contact your legal counsel. I know I will be contacting mine. She closed her suite door, and the Do Not Disturb light glowed amber once more. For Marcus Thorne, it was the end of the world. For the remainder of the flight, the first-class cabin of Aurajet 101 was a tomb. The meal service was not resumed. The lights were dimmed, but no one slept. The other passengers, having witnessed the entire drama, stayed silent, occasionally exchanging wide-eyed glances. Chloe never reopened her suite door. Muffled sobs could be heard from within. Marcus Thorne sat ramrod straight, his face slick with a cold sweat. He didn't drink. He didn't move. He just stared at the bulkhead, his empire crumbling in his mind. He knew what contacting legal counsel meant. This wasn't just a customer service complaint. This was a corporate-level incident. Meanwhile, in the forward galley, a different scene was playing out. Serafina had stepped out of her suite and quietly entered the galley, where Ben Carter and a terrified Evelyn Shaw were standing. Serafina first addressed the young man. Ben. Is it Ben Carter? Yes, ma'am. Miss Jordan, ma'am, he stammered. Ben, I saw what happened. You were professional. You were polite. You were targeted by that man, and you did nothing wrong. I want to be very clear about that. Thank you, ma'am, Ben said, relief washing over his face. What you saw from your lead purser, however, she said, her voice hardening as she turned to Evelyn, was an abject failure. You threw him to the wolves. You broke your own company's protocol. Evelyn burst into tears. Miss Jordan, please. He was so aggressive. I have a mortgage. I have kids. I was scared he'd file a report that I'd be fired. I was just trying to keep the peace. You weren't keeping the peace, Serafina corrected her. You were sacrificing your crew to appease a bully. My new policy, which you clearly haven't read, states that in a conflict between an abusive passenger and a crew member, Aurajet backs the crew. Always. You had the power to have Mr. Thorne arrested. You had the power to tell the captain. You had the power to issue a formal red card warning. You did none of those things. Instead, you offered him more wine. I'm so sorry. Please don't fire me, Evelyn wept. That's not my decision to make right here, Serafina said, though it absolutely was. Your future will be decided by Jonathan Briggs and HR. But I will tell you this, Evelyn. Your actions tonight showed me that you are not, in your current state, qualified to lead a team. You are demoted from purser, effective immediately. You will finish this flight as a standard attendant. Ben, she said, turning to him, you will be the acting lead for the remainder of the flight. Log the incident, prepare the cabin for landing, and coordinate with the ground crew. Can you do that? Ben, stunned, stood up straighter. Yes, ma'am, I can. Good. Serafina gave him a nod. Your composure under pressure is exactly what I look for in a leader. She left the galley and returned to her seat. The descent into London was heavy with dread. As the 777's wheels screeched onto the runway at Heathrow, Marcus Thorne looked like a man being led to his own execution. The plane taxied to its gate at Terminal 5. The fastened seatbelt sign pinged off. But before anyone could even think of standing, the captain's voice came on. "Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to London Heathrow. We ask that all passengers please remain seated. The cabin door is about to be opened, and we will have officials boarding the aircraft. Please remain seated until instructed." Marcus squeezed his eyes shut. The door opened. Serafina watched as 2 uniformed Metropolitan Police constables boarded, followed by a man in a perfectly tailored suit. This was Jonathan Briggs, the Orajet UK operations director. He was sharp, fast-moving, and looked furious. He walked directly to Suite 1A, ignoring everyone else. He bowed his head slightly. "Miss Jordan, welcome to London. I am appalled. I cannot apologize enough." "Save it, Jonathan," Serafina said, gathering her Toomey bag. "The problem is in 1C and 1D. Jonathan nodded, his face grim. He turned to the police. "Constables, Mr. Marcus Thorne in 1C and Miss Chloe Davies in 1D. They are to be escorted off the aircraft. Their details are being flagged, and Orajet is pressing for a full public order offense, citing threatening and discriminatory behavior." The constables moved. "Mr. Thorne, please come with us." Marcus stood, his legs shaking. As he stepped into the aisle, he had to pass Serafina's suite. He stopped, his face a grotesque mask of desperation. "Miss Jordan, Serafina, please. I have a family. This will ruin me. It was a mistake. A stupid, drunken mistake." Serafina looked at him, her face as hard as marble. "When you laughed at me, you were sober. When you called me a monkey, you were sober. When you told your partner I was a diversity quota, you were sober. Your drunken mistake was just your real self, but louder. Your apologies are worthless because you're not sorry for what you did. You're just sorry you got caught by me. Get off my plane." The constables grabbed his arms. "Sir, let's go." They hauled him out. Chloe followed, hiding her face, sobbing. As they were marched down the jet bridge, every passenger in business class and premium economy watched. Many, having heard the commotion, were recording on their phones. The walk of shame was total, public, and humiliating. Serafina was the next to deplane. Jonathan Briggs walked with her. "What's his status, Jonathan?" she asked. "Thorne is executive platinum, or he was," Jonathan said, typing on his tablet. "I've just revoked his status, voided his 4 million air miles, and placed him on the permanent no-fly list. He is banned from Orajet, and by proxy, our entire partner alliance. He won't be flying on any reputable carrier for the rest of his life." "Good," Serafina said. "And Miss Shaw?" "Demoted as you instructed. She'll be flown back to JFK as a passenger and will report to HR for a full disciplinary review. I'm recommending termination." "No," Serafina said. "Don't fire her. I want her on a 6-month performance improvement plan. Send her to every diversity, equity, and inclusion seminar we have. I want her working with our community outreach team in Queens. She's not a lost cause. She's a product of a weak culture. She's a mirror. I want her retrained. Ben Carter, however, fast-track him. I want him in leadership training by next month." "Yes, Miss Jordan," Jonathan said, impressed. They reached the end of the jet bridge. Serafina paused. "The videos from the cabin are going to leak, Jonathan. They'll be on the Daily Mail by noon. Get ahead of it. I want a statement from Orajet. No, we apologize for the incident fluff. I want it strong." She dictated it right there. Orajet International confirms that 2 passengers were removed from Flight 101 upon arrival in London due to their repeated and reprehensible verbal abuse and discriminatory harassment of a fellow passenger and crew. Orajet has a zero-tolerance policy for racism, bigotry, and abuse. The passengers in question have been banned for life. We are proud of our crew for handling a difficult situation and ensuring the safety of the cabin. "What about you, Miss Jordan?" Jonathan asked. "The press will find out it was you." "Let them," Serafina said, adjusting the strap of her bag. "It's time the world knew exactly what this airline stands for. The fallout was not just fast, it was catastrophic. By the time Serafina was in her car heading to her London flat, The hashtag #AuraJetRacist was trending. Someone's blurry phone video of Marcus being hauled off the plane was all over Twitter, now X. "That's Marcus Thorne," someone in the finance world tweeted. "Partner at Greystone Capital. What did he do?" The Daily Mail had the story by 10 a.m., the New York Post by noon. Billionaire's bigot, Patek-wearing PE partner Marcus Thorne kicked off flight, banned for life after racist tirade. The victim? Only the billionaire black woman who owns the airline. The story was irresistible. It was a perfect, self-contained drama of hubris and karma. At the London offices of Greystone Capital, an emergency board meeting was called. Greystone was an old money firm, and its reputation was everything. Marcus Thorne, with his flashy new money style, had always been tolerated because he was a rainmaker. But this was different. This was a public relations nuclear bomb. The firm's senior partner, a stoic man named Alistair Reed, read the Aurajet official statement aloud. "Reprehensible verbal abuse and discriminatory harassment. This is the official statement from an $8 billion corporation. A corporation, I might add, that we share several institutional investors with." "He's a fool," another partner spat. "To do this on any flight is moronic. To do it to Serafina Jordan? The woman is a legend. She's on the board of the most powerful tech fund in the world. She's Serafina Jordan." The problem was, Marcus was the lead on their biggest deal. A $3.4 billion hostile takeover of a beloved family-run green energy company in California. The deal was already facing public backlash for being a vulture capital move. The phone rang in the boardroom. It was the CEO of the green energy company. "Alistair," the CEO's voice was frigid. "I just saw the news. We are, effective immediately, rejecting your offer. We will not, under any circumstances, allow our company, our employees, or our legacy to be associated with the kind of culture represented by Mr. Thorne. Any further attempts at contact will be considered hostile harassment. We are done." The line went dead. The $3.4 billion deal, which would have netted Greystone a fortune, was gone. Evaporated. Alistair Reed looked at his partners. The decision was unanimous. Marcus was still being processed at the Heathrow police station. He was released with a fine and a caution. When his corporate Amex was declined, his company phone buzzed. It was an email from Alistair Reed. The subject: termination of employment. "Marcus," the email began, "your actions on Aurajet 101 were not just a personal embarrassment. They were a direct and catastrophic violation of the Greystone Capital Code of Conduct. Your reprehensible behavior, as Aurajet so accurately put it, has directly resulted in the collapse of the evergreen energy deal, costing this firm billions in potential revenue and inflicting incalculable damage to our reputation. You are fired, effective immediately, for cause. All unvested stock options are forfeit. Your partnership is dissolved. Do not come to the office. Your personal effects will be couriered to you. We are done." Marcus dropped his phone. It clattered to the floor of the police station lobby. For cause. That meant no severance, no golden parachute. All his unvested stock. That was tens of millions of dollars. Gone. In 6 hours. From JFK to LHR. He had flown from the top of the world to rock bottom. Chloe had it just as bad. As an influencer, her currency was her image. But the image of her hiding her face, being escorted off a plane, was not one her sponsors, Dior, Revolve, and a dozen high-end wellness brands, wanted to be associated with. By the end of the day, her contracts were all terminated, citing morality clauses. Marcus Thorne, banned from the airline, fired from his job, and publicly humiliated, was stranded in London. He couldn't even book a hotel. He had to take the Heathrow Express train to Paddington, a commoner journey he hadn't made in decades, and find a cheap hotel that would take his personal credit card. He was, in every sense of the word, grounded. A week later, Serafina Jordan walked into the 80th floor boardroom of the Aurajet Tower in New York. The mood was electric. The long, polished mahogany table reflected the severe gray skyline of Manhattan, but the energy in the room was anything but. Her executive team, her COO, David Chen, her CFO, Maria Gonzalez, her head of marketing, Richard Beale, and her general counsel, Annika Sharma, were all standing. They didn't just look respectful, they looked energized. "Good morning," Serafina said, taking her seat at the head of the table. "Richard, you first. What's the sentiment?" Richard Beale, a man who usually spoke in the cautious language of metrics and brand verticals, was practically vibrating. "Serafina, it's not like anything I've ever seen. Eventful doesn't cover it. The media storm has been 100% positive. We're not just an airline, we're a cultural moment." He clicked his remote. The large screen at the end of the room lit up. "Our social media mentions are up 4,100%. The hashtag #OraJetAccord, which we didn't even create, is trending. The Daily Show did a whole segment on Marcus Thorne, calling him the most expensive heckler in history. Every talk show, every news outlet has lauded our zero-tolerance stance. We're the heroes." He clicked to the next slide. "And it's not just talk. Bookings, first and business are up 18% week over week. But this is the kicker. Economy is up 22%. People are switching airlines. They're paying more to fly with us because, and this is a quote from a focus group last night, "OraJet is the only airline that has our back. We've become the brand of human dignity. You can't buy this kind of loyalty." "It's not all champagne." Annika Sharma, the general counsel, cut in, her voice precise. "Greystone Capital is, as expected, making noise. They're threatening to sue for tortious interference and defamation. They claim our public statement about Thorne's reprehensible behavior directly led to the collapse of their $3.4 billion evergreen energy deal." David Chen, the COO, scoffed. "Alastair Reed is a dinosaur. They're bleeding, they're just lashing out." "It's a bluff," Serafina said, her voice cutting through the chatter. The room went silent. "A noisy, desperate bluff. Annika, I want you to send a reply to Greystone. Inform them that we will not be retracting our statement, as it is factually accurate. Furthermore, inform them that if they proceed with this frivolous lawsuit, we will countersue for harassment and file a motion to unseal the entire passenger and crew testimony from Flight 101, including Miss Davies's. I doubt Mr. Thorne's partners want the full transcript of his monkey monologue read in open court." Annika smiled, a thin, sharp expression. "Understood. They'll be silent by 5 o'clock. "Good." Serafina leaned forward, lacing her fingers. "Now let's talk about why we're really here. Richard, I appreciate the good news, but we are not heroes. We got lucky. We got lucky that the passenger Marcus Thorne decided to racially abuse was me. The owner. What if it had been a teacher from the Bronx who'd saved up for 5 years for that seat? What if it had been a junior executive on her first business trip? The system failed," she said, her voice dropping to a dangerous quiet. "Evelyn Shaw, a 25-year veteran, caved like a wet paper bag. She threw her own crew member to the wolves to appease a bully. That is our culture. That is the cancer I've been talking about. We weren't a brand of human dignity last week. We were a brand of cowardice, and we got caught. The only difference is, I was the one who caught us." The room was stone silent. "So," she said, "we're going to change. Not our marketing, not our image, our bones. Today we are announcing the OraJet 101 Accord, and it is non-negotiable." The screen changed to a new slide. It had 3 simple, powerful points. First, the one warning protocol. Any passenger, regardless of status, I don't care if he's executive platinum or the King of England, who uses abusive, discriminatory, or threatening language to staff or another passenger, gets one formal verbal warning. This warning is to be logged by the purser in their handheld device, which will immediately notify the captain and ground control, a digital paper trail in real time. Second, the red card. A second offense, any further abuse, any escalation, any physical contact, is an immediate red card. The purser will be empowered with the captain's authority to issue it. The moment a red card is issued, that passenger is informed their contract of carriage is void. No more alcohol. They will be met by police upon landing. And here's the new part. Their status is revoked, and their miles are voided before the plane touches the ground. We are not waiting for a committee. The decision is made in the air. And third, she said, and this is the most important part, the crew is backed. She looked at David. We're announcing a new $10 million crew legal defense fund. From now on, any employee who follows the accord, who red cards a passenger, and who is then targeted by that passenger if they're sued, if they're harassed online, Orajet will provide all legal counsel at our expense. We will pay every dollar of their legal fees, and we will, as a corporation, countersue that passenger for frivolous litigation. We are taking the target off our employees' backs and putting it on this $8 billion corporation. Let them sue me. The executives were stunned. This wasn't a PR move. This was a declaration of war against the Karen and Ken culture that had terrorized the service industry for a decade. David Chen let out a slow whistle. Serafina, that's revolutionary. The unions they'll build a statue of you. I don't want a statue, Serafina said. I want a crew that isn't scared to do their job. I want Evelyn Shaw to never again have to choose between her mortgage and her dignity. This accord is to be printed and framed at every check-in desk, in every lounge, and in every galley. Our customers need to see it. Our crew needs to breathe it. We are no longer just a transport service. We are a global community, and in this community, dignity is not a luxury item. It is the standard. Make it happen. The ripple effect was immediate. Orajet's main rivals, Transamerican and Global United, were caught flat-footed. Their PR departments, used to boilerplate apologies, were hammered. Flight attendant unions publicly praised Orajet and cited the 101 Accord in their new contract demands, demanding their own crew defense funds. Within 2 months, both rival airlines, facing a PR nightmare and a staff revolt, begrudgingly announced similar sky-high standards and flyer-friendly policies. They were pale imitations, but it didn't matter. Serafina hadn't just changed her airline. She'd changed the entire industry. But the change was most profound for the people on Flight 101. For Evelyn Shaw, the descent had been a living hell. She was flown back to JFK in an economy seat, stripped of her purser rank. She reported to the Orajet HR building in Queens, a sterile gray box she had never been to, convinced her 25-year career was over. She sat opposite Cynthia Barnes, the formidable head of human resources. I know I failed, Cynthia, Evelyn wept, her voice hoarse. I've been doing this so long. The rule was always the customer is always right. Always, especially a platinum member. I saw him and I didn't see a bully. I saw a revenue-critical passenger. I saw my mortgage, my kid's college. I froze. I reverted to my old training. Your old training is the problem, Evelyn, Cynthia said, her voice firm but not unkind. That culture, the one that says smile while being abused, is dead. Miss Jordan killed it. Evelyn braced for the end. So I'm fired. No, Cynthia said, surprising her. Miss Jordan was very specific. She doesn't want you fired. She said you're not a lost cause, you're a mirror. She wants you retrained. From scratch. For 6 months, Evelyn was taken off all flights. Her days were spent in mandatory DEI seminars, sitting not with senior staff, but with the 20-year-old new hires. She listened as they talked about their expectations, their refusal to be mistreated. She was then assigned to the community outreach team, working at job fairs in the Bronx and Queens, talking to young black and brown applicants who wanted to join the airline. She wasn't Evelyn the purser, she was just Evelyn. She listened, she learned. The shame burned, but then it refined. 7 months after Flight 101, she stood in front of a new class of graduating flight attendants at the Orajet Academy. She was not in her purser uniform. She was in a simple, sharp trainer's suit. "Good morning," she said, her voice clear and strong. My name is Evelyn Shaw. Some of you might have heard of me. I was the lead purser on Flight 101. The room, which had been buzzing, went dead quiet. I'm here today to teach you about the 101 Accord, but I'm not just here to read you the rules. I'm here to tell you a story about a man in 1C and a woman in 1A. I'm here to tell you what happens when you fail. I'm here to teach you how to be brave. I failed my test. You will not. By all accounts, she became the most effective and most respected instructor in the Academy's history. For Ben Carter, the trajectory was the exact opposite. He was summoned to Jonathan Briggs's London office. Miss Jordan was exceptionally clear, Briggs said, leaning back in his chair. She didn't just note your composure. Her exact words were, "That's my new benchmark for leadership. The company is paying for your full leadership and management certification, starting immediately. Your purser training starts Monday." "Sir," Ben stammered, I just did my job. No, Ben," Jonathan corrected him. "You did her job. You were the only one in that cabin who remembered what our values are, even when your own superior forgot. That's not doing your job. That's setting the standard. Welcome to management." A year later, Purser Ben Carter led his pre-flight briefing for the flagship London to Singapore flight. He was sharp, confident, and had the unflinching respect of his crew. "Listen up, team. Full flight 280 souls. I want a clean, safe, and respectful service. And remember," he said, tapping the framed 101 Accord on the galley wall, "I back you 100%. You see something, you say something. We don't tolerate abuse. Not for a platinum member, not for a celebrity, not for anyone. We are in this together." Got it? The crew's "yes, sir" was sharp and motivated. And for Marcus Thorne, the fall was bottomless. His wrongful termination lawsuit against Greystone Capital was laughed out of court. The judge, in a scathing 12-page dismissal, called it a frivolous and narcissistic attempt to blame others for his own odious behavior. He was ordered to pay Greystone's legal fees. He was a pariah. No firm in New York, London, or Hong Kong would touch him. He wasn't just unemployed. He was a reputational risk. Chloe Davies, the woman in 1D, had released a tearful tell-all video, which garnered 3 million views, about how Marcus was always abusive, and she was so scared. She'd sold the story, and the blood-red Birkin bag, and disappeared with a new, younger tech bro. The New York Post ran a gleeful follow-up 6 months later. "Where is the Aurajet racist now?" They'd found him. They snapped a picture of him, 30 pounds heavier, in a stained polo shirt, outside a rundown golf course condo in Boca Raton. The $3.4 billion dealmaker was gone. The ultimate karma, however, came a year later. Marcus Thorne, having burned through his liquid assets, was at the Fort Lauderdale airport. He was at the Spirit Airlines counter, arguing with a gate agent. "What do you mean $65 for the carry-on? It's absurd. Don't you know who I am?" The agent, a young woman with pink hair, didn't even look up from her screen. "Sir, I just know you're $65 short for the bag. Pay or it stays." His hand trembled, not with power but with pathetic rage. He, Marcus Thorne, who had commanded billions and demanded Dom Perignon, was defeated by a budget airline bag fee. He paid. 2 years later, Serafina Jordan was in 1A on the new, ultra-long haul from New York to Singapore. A new purser, a young man named Leo, approached her. "Welcome aboard, Miss Jordan. It's truly an honor to have you. A pre-departure beverage? The 2012 Dom is chilled and ready." "I'd love one, Leo. Thank you," she said. As he poured, a man in 1D, also in a Patek, grumbled loudly. "The service is slow. Can we get this thing moving? I have a meeting." Leo paused. He turned to the man in 1D, his smile polite but firm. "Sir, we'll be with you in just 1 moment. All our first-class passengers will receive the same excellent service. We appreciate your patience." The man in 1D looked surprised for a second, then just nodded. "Fine. Thank you." The expectation had changed. The fear was gone. Serafina smiled, accepting her glass. She took a sip of the champagne, the bubbles crisp and perfect. She looked out the window as the massive engine spooled up. She closed her eyes, and for the first time truly relaxed on one of her own planes. The Accord was working. Her plane was safe. That right there is what happens when arrogance and prejudice crash into quiet, unshakable power. Marcus Thorne thought his money bought him the right to be cruel, to laugh at a black woman just for existing in his space. He didn't realize he was just a loud-mouthed guest in her house, and she had every right to throw him out. The karma in this story is so powerful because it wasn't just about being banned from a flight. It was about his entire world, built on a foundation of entitlement, crumbling to dust. His wallet, his reputation, his career, all gone because he couldn't stand to see a black woman in first class. What did you think of Marcus's downfall? Was it hard enough? Do you think Evelyn the purser deserved her second chance? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you so much for listening to this story. If you love the drama and the hard-hitting karma, please show your support by hitting that like button. Share this video with someone who needs to see it. And most importantly, subscribe to the channel for more real-life drama stories, just like this one. Click that notification bell so you never miss an upload.